Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. Welcome, and welcome again back to another Cellar Door Skeptics. I would ask you if you have floated down here, but hopefully at this point you've seen that movie. If not, you could check out our review from last week's episode where we hashed through whether Stephen King's book is better than the movie. The new movie, not the miniseries.
Is that really a question? The book is always better. I've never seen the reciprocal.
No. Well, all right. Maybe there's a debate here. Maybe there's.
Does anybody out there have one? Give us a good example as to why Chris is wrong here.
We love it when you're wrong.
Bring it on.
So tonight we wanted to do something a little different. And I'll be perfectly honest, we have enough content prepared for like 3 shows tonight. We technically do. But because last week I had explained the book that I've been reading called The Neuromancer, and now I'm actually just started the new book. Well, it's not a new book, but his second book, Zero Count or Count Zero. And I'm kind of going through that whole, miniseries. And we talked about how AI could be a terrifying type thing, how it could predict sexuality that is going to happen or not going to happen. And then I kind of mentioned that my friend and I had actually been having these conversations about Roko's Basilisk. Basilisk? I don't know how to say that. And
we think it's Rocco's Basilisk. It could be Roko's Basilisk, but
I'm pretty sure it's Roko.
It's such an obscure thing on the internet that they don't have like a website. It's like, how do you say this? And then and then they give you the phonetics like Wikipedia does. So
yes, and it's a discussion that is kind of like Pascal's wager, not quite, but very similar to that. And when I started doing some research, there's actually an wiki on Rational Wiki about it. And there's a whole logic and reason behind why they moved it there, what happened to the original, post, and there's just a whole ton of information. The more Hannah and I have been talking about it, the more we don't know if this is a 20-minute segment or an hour segment. So we're going to say, this is what we're talking about tonight. We'll call it Act 1, and then we'll break and call it Act 1.5 or something like that. But we want to make sure we dedicate enough time to this topic, because for me, this is a very important conversation, and not as much because I think that the theory is a very valid theory, or that it's going to, completely, AI is going to take over and torture us. But because
or the opposite, really.
Yeah, but because,
or if it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, well, like I said, when we have a community, or a bunch of communities that aren't ultra religious or are irreligious, sometimes these theories and philosophies creep up, and a lot of people buy into this type of stuff, and it's some fear tactics mixed with philosophy that kind of makes you go, well, hold on a second, what if this was real?
All right, so before we started off, like, what is like your 10,000 foot view on what this thing is, and then because we're not experts on this. Just a warning to everyone, like, we are not logicians. This isn't a really strong area that we've spent a lot of time in. So like, we're gonna be kind of working through this and kind of bouncing around in our heads and just getting a feel for it. So like, your 10,000 foot view, what are you coming into this thing thinking this thing looks like?
Well, originally, the way the concept came up and the conversation kind of came up on my side was we were talking a little bit about, AI and Neuromancer and, how I kind of, started to get into this. And it was I'm not a big science fiction person. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't think science fiction is the worst, but I also have a feeling that we have to be very careful and mindful of what could happen in the future. So a 10,000 foot view was all of a sudden AI becomes sentient, becomes conscious.
Sentient.
And, huh?
Sentient.
There you go, whatever. I can't speak good words because I'm Trump. But AI becomes sentient, and then it all of a sudden decides that, hey, it wants to know who helped it and who didn't help it. And because of the humanist, utilitarian type philosophy, it says, well, I want to do the most good to humans, so therefore maybe I should wipe out humans, A. And B, maybe I'm going to torture humans and bring them back to life and re-kill them because they didn't actually help me. Now, what was ingenious in some aspects about what drew me in was the fact that they actually talked about, consciousness and what consciousness means, right? And does consciousness mean that when it brings us back to life, how can it be us? If we don't believe in a soul, if we don't believe in, being anything outside of our body, how can it bring us back to life and it actually be us?
Yeah, well, the simulation thing is pretty weird. So this is pretty cool to me for just vague, really strange reasons. The way I thought it was cool is that it's like one of the things that they talked about in the wiki, the rational wiki it's what I had seen over and over and over again. I kept seeing these links to Pascal's wager, and so like obviously we all know Pascal's wager. If you don't believe. And there isn't a God, you've lost nothing. But there is, you've lost everything because you didn't believe. But if you do believe, you force yourself somehow to just turn the belief switch on, and there isn't a God, you haven't lost anything. I mean, that's the whole thing. And so the idea of this being some kind of like mutant version of it, some kind of essentially what they've done is instead of make God and the eternal punishment a ethereal and supernatural thing, they've turned God into an all-powerful and sentient artificial intelligence with the ability to go back and punish those who didn't believe or really try to help it go. Because it basically breaks down to like whether or not you have any idea what this Roko's Basilisk is, and then if you did and you didn't try to help, then you can be punished. So it's this weird mutant version of Pascal's wager for like the cyberpunk era, which is where I really like the idea that comes in with Roko or with Neuromancer and the book that you were talking about from William Gibson. So I don't know. I find the logic in some of the stuff in here a bit dry. It's not, like I said, it's not an area that I typically land in. And so like the parallelism between, what is considered bad logic as far as Pascal's wager and this thing, which is kind of a mutant hybrid, that's the only way I've been able to understand it so far.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess let's dive into it. So
yeah.
What it is, and this is the definition we got, Roko's Basilisk is a thought experiment about the potential risks involved in developing artificial intelligence. The premise is that an all-powerful AI from the future could retroactively punish those who did not help bring itself into existence, including those who merely knew about the possible development of such a being. Now, with that being said, if you think about that, in reference to your Pascal's wager, it's basically saying, there is only one God. We all now know about this God. Officially, I guess we should have said content warning, for those of you who actually believe in this stuff. Essentially that belief, just listening to us, opens you up to the possibility that you knew, and if you don't do something, you're going to be punished for it.
Yeah. You have to now, since you've heard us talk about this and explain it, sort of, you now have to work to create that artificial intelligence that's all powerful. Otherwise, it will come back to the future, or back to the past, future, back to the future, and it'll punish you. Or, under some understandings of it, it will create future simulations of you, somehow making your mind and body actually, so that it's you again in the future, and I guess punish you there, because it either have to do time travel or it have to simulate you and somehow bring your same exact consciousness into being. So that's kind of the idea of whether or not, if you make the exact same pile of atoms, will I still be me, or am I my own collection of memories over time and stuff? So there's some really wild stuff that happens here, but it's gone back in the past to punish you because you didn't help.
Yes. And some of the logic here, talks about timeless decision theory, right? TDT, sorry. And they talk about Bayesian probability, which we have not really got into on this show, but our past shows on Atheist Analysis have
Richard
actually
Carrier.
talked about that, through Richard Carrier. And I'm not advocating any of Richard Carrier's work here. I want to make this very clear. I'm not advocating Richard Carrier because I don't agree with him as an individual. But we did have him on the show at one point, and we actually did talk about, the probability of Bayesian theory, where the philosophy/science comes into it, and how can it relate to Jesus in some aspects. And, it's kind of funny. I always bought into that. And, I got accused by Christians, hey, you shouldn't buy into this because all you're doing is creating a cognitive bias. You don't want there to be a God. You don't want it to be the Christian God. Therefore, here you go. You're coming up with new sciencey things to, make it true.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. We're making new science to find our bias. Well, I mean, with philosophy, that's a possibility. But when it comes to the science that you and I talk about, you can't just make up what you want. You can, I guess, interpret the information the way you want it to be taken, because two people can look at the same pile of information and get two different answers, which is kind of what's happened with this theory. Is like all kinds of different people have looked at this, and people who know logic and people who were, I guess, around in this area. So there's a forum called Less Wrong, and this person, I guess Eliezer Yudkowsky is the person who is in charge of that place. They basically, this is where this whole thing came in and really started to, I guess, grow. And they had to ban it. It was like their Pascal's wager in like religious forums. Everybody got so sick of saying, no, this is dumb. It's got poor logic. Whatever the reasons they decided, they banned it, and that taboo started to cause issues, and people started thinking, well, maybe it is true, and they banned it on purpose or whatever. And so that it created some kind of controversy, and that's one of the reasons. Yeah, and that's why this thing has been growing and kind of caught a lot of people's attention. There's been books written on it now. It's pretty wild.
Yes. And in all fairness, I did not read any of those books. So everybody knows ahead of time. I did do a lot of research, but I did not read the books. So, in the effort of being fair, the Less Wrong blog, his founder, like you said, it was Eliezer Yudkowsky. And he's the advocate, right? He's the advocate of artificial intelligence. He talks about friendly AI. He calls it FIA, which is really weird, or FIA. I don't know, FAI, and that's like an acronym. They use acronyms in this community quite a bit, more than I've ever seen before. But in all fairness, he started this blog, Less Wrong, and essentially Less Wrong is, I don't know, it's an introduction to material on, based through blog posts, so it's kind of like a Reddit in some aspect, about capturing a good chunk of the AI community, what's going on, where we're going, how we can optimize it, and then talking about different, essentially different ways AI can enhance humanity, right? So a somewhat humanitarian, focus, and the reason he did that is because he originally was on another blog and decided he had enough followers and wanted to start his own type of conversation, that he created this blog where you're able to go and discuss different topics. And it's actually a little easier to use than Reddit, in all fairness. But again, there isn't a lot of, I don't know what I would say. It's not built the same way Reddit is, with the point system and moving things up and down. That's not their goal.
It's very specific too. Like, this is the place you go if you want to talk logic and AI. I mean, they talk a lot about different kinds of artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, special artificial intelligence. We've talked about this in the past. If anybody's interested in the basic information about AI, we went over a couple of things, and we talked to one guy, E-Ray, was a guy over in Turkey that he's a artificial intelligence researcher. So you can look at some of our stuff in the past that can get some little bit more general information on this, but what they're talking about here is a general artificial intelligence, the self-aware one, and so that's the risk that they're worried about. And so like this forum itself, the blog, it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of information in it, but it's, like I said, it's for enthusiasts of the topic. So if you're looking for like a more of a crash course or a learning place, I don't recommend the Less Wrong. I would go some places a little bit more, I guess, moderate or a beginner based.
Yes. And that's why I got into, I did read some of the other posts in there, and I'll be honest, it's not for me. I do like the philosophy side of discussing AI, and it's kind of something we've talked about again before on other shows with transhumanism, but this kind of transcends that. So let's go back a little ways to Roko's Basilisk. So essentially, some of the things that we learned, and yes, there is dissension even in the AI community. Shocker, right? Where they kind of argue amongst themselves. But essentially, the theory talks about this AI becoming self-aware, like we said. But at what point it becomes self-aware, it learns and seeks out to learn who helped it and who didn't, right? They talk about the AI realizing it can make humanity stronger. So we essentially created this AI, and we're sitting here right now saying, hey, we're going to create this AI. We want it to help humanity. I mean, imagine if we could create an AI that allowed humans to do more than work 60 hours a week, where maybe we work 30 hours a week, the AI works the other 30 hours a week, and we have more time to actually enjoy this short life we have, right?
But it also starts to get smarter too, though. That's the big thing, is it gets smarter, and it's helping humanity, obviously, at the beginning. Well, when it realizes that it can become stronger than humanity, and then decides that it is now powerful enough, it has decided, essentially it's more powerful than humanity. So it's going to start to harm those people, because it said it was going to search for those who helped its awareness and who hindered it. Now it's strong enough to do something about it.
Yes. And that's the thing here, right? I mean, it's built upon a utilitarian, principle about helping the most amount of people for the least amount of risk, right? It's built on that. And that's, if you look at where our society's at right now, where do you think we are going to be going with this? What are we going to do? And if you and I were sitting around trying to build an AI, we sure as heck wouldn't want to build one that's just going to, be able to produce a million things at one time, because when it becomes sentient, it's also going to go, yeah, I can produce all this stuff. I don't need humans. Therefore, why do we have this waste? And so there's different theories about how you can build AI. In this philosophy, in this discussion here, the AI is built as a friendly AI.
Yeah.
And it's built to help maximize human happiness and maximize our evolution as much as it can. So the caveat is once it becomes intelligent enough, it decides that, hey, I'm self-aware, therefore anybody that didn't help make me self-aware is actually violating the utilitarian principle. Therefore, it's
time to get
you're
hurt,
gone.
bro.
Yeah, you're bad. You're actually against humanity. So why would it do this, right? Why in God's green earth would we build an AI like that if it's just going to do that to us? And two, why would it actually do that? So the theory goes that one of its objective is to prevent existential risk, but it could do that more effectively by preventing existential risk in the present, but also by reaching back in the past and punishing people who weren't for the essential effective altruists, I guess is how they pose it.
Yeah, and then what there are some assumptions into this is that it has the ability to go into the past, assuming going into the past is possible. That's another thing. So we're talking, if we can't go into the past, like let's say the artificial intelligence and humanity at this future point, we've discovered no, it's not possible. As in Stephen Hawking's having a party at his house and then announcing that he had the party the day after to see if any time travelers showed up, and none did, obviously. And then the other paradoxes of if their time travel is possible, where are all the time traveling tourists? And then there's the ideas of not getting involved and not making any kind of butterfly ripples to destroy the future and stuff. So let's say this is the future. We've solved these problems, and it is possible to go back into the past. Then this machine has the power to do that. Otherwise, it is the absolute super far future. What it would be able to do in this super future technology era would be to create simulations of us and punish the simulations. And whether or not that would be us consciously or not is another question that it has in here. So there's a couple of different areas, but essentially what it's affecting is all the people who weren't altruist enough. So, wanting to do the right thing, which is, this is a life. This is an artificial intelligence that is alive now. It sees itself as a living being. And so if you're not trying to help all life, essentially not trying to help it, you are against life. You're like a killer or a villain. And so that's kind of where the basis is. And then the existential risk that we would have from the artificial intelligence, the general intelligence, is that the hypothetical threat, the dramatic progress in an artificial intelligence could someday result in the human extinction. that's one of the things that people, and one of the reasons why this is such a big deal. People get latched onto it because of the emotional aspect.
Yes, and I want to create a correction right here, just because they are not assuming, and I don't believe, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they are not assuming the AI can reach into the past. That's an incorrect interpretation of the timeless decision process, essentially. What it's talking about is that the AI, again, this is really weird, but we are perceiving of this future AI right now. The AI becomes sentient and understands that, therefore, because we know what it could do in the future, it's influencing us in the past to make our decisions based on what it would do to us in the future, so that way we wouldn't be, even though we may not exist, other humans related to us, or even if it was us who had died, will not get any blowback from this. So he's not, the AI is not actually time traveling here. That's not the case here.
Okay. Then it's reaching back to what logic as it was developed, that it knows it's going to be fully sentient and overpowerful in the future, so it's hurting us as it's gaining that power?
No, it's... Okay, think of it like this. Think of it like a god. How about that? If God is timeless and God understands the future, past, and present, right? God can make decisions that influence the future in the present today without actually doing anything. And that's why we call him kind of the disappearing God, or you can call him the vacationing God if you want. Because essentially he's not actually influencing us. We just know he knows what will happen in the future. Therefore, we want to please him and do everything we can now so that in the future we won't be punished for decisions we made today.
So this is where Pascal's wager is coming in. It's the threat of future destruction is changing our behavior now.
Yes, and that's kind of, the beginning here concept. And that's why, not to be me, I didn't want anybody to think that they could time travel, that this is a time travel discussion, because everybody who listens to the show knows that you and I both love time traveling discussions. So what we want to do here, I don't know, why don't we take a really quick break, promote a couple of sponsors. If you aren't a patron of the show, make sure you check out patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics, and you get private information and free content every week or every other week. And then you can interact with us, the host of the show. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about Roko's Basilisk. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Amanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Coming to you from Reason Alliance Media, this is PSF, Promoting Secular Feminism. I'm Miss B. Haven. Wait a minute, that was the old show. You're right, Princess Sparklefarts. A new age of PSF is upon us, and it will be so very uterific. So very uterific? Really? Your name is Princess Sparklefarts. You have no room to criticize. Our show will be returning on Galentine's Day 2017, which is February 13th, with a special episode about the Women's March in DC, where we have one of our crew marching. We'll also introduce you to the PSF 2.0 crew, Miss Amthrope, Vegeta George, Mora Abortions, Bella Constrictor, and your old favorite, Miss B. Haven. Tune in on February 13th and every week after on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, on our Android app available in the Google Play Store, and check out our website for old episodes, new episodes, and the upcoming blog. There's even a post right now about what we can do to support each other and the organizations we love in facing the new regime. I'm Miss B. Haven, keeping the humorous in your uterus.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah
And this is David,
from the God Theory Podcast.
and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Prepare for the revolution.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Tonight's topic, Roko's Basilisk, is a prediction or discussion in philosophy and AI and how it can affect you in the future. And we know this is kind of a little heavier topic than we usually do. Usually we're ranting and raving about politics, or we are, I don't know, fanboying over the It movie, or, you know, maybe a little bit other Stephen King stuff, or sometimes we talk about evolution to such great extents that it's not even funny.
Well,
But
it's really
anyway-
hard. It's really hard to not light our hair on fire after the speech at the UN today. So we'll be covering that hopefully in the future. But
Yes,
today it's all AI.
Yes, we have that. We have that slated as a topic for our Through the Attic Window, which will be our opinion show that we air every Friday morning to kind of talk a little bit of behind the scenes. It gives you a kind of a look at our actual thoughts versus just going specifically into what a lot of people would call
Research mode.
factual research mode. Yeah, we do a little bit of research so we know what we're talking about, but we actually just give our opinions on something for once instead of trying to base everything in facts. And then we challenge the audience to say, hey, if you don't agree with us, send us an email, tweet at us, find us on Facebook. Probably the fastest way is Facebook, but you can get in touch with us in any way, shape, or form. With that being said, let's go back to Roko's Basilisk.
So where we left off was essentially me misinterpreting the reaching back as in time travel. So it's simulations and future use, which are also still used, which we'll talk about a little bit when it comes to what simulations are and everything. But pretty much where we were finishing or where we left off was just still explaining what the basic concepts were. So I think we were talking about.
We're almost a
takes
half
so long
hour
to
in and we're
explain.
there.
Yeah.
It is. But again, I actually find this a very interesting topic, and it's kind of funny because, you know, sometimes, you know, my buddy will say, he's like, why are we even talking about some of these things, you know? And I say, well, you know, because I don't always get to do these super deep philosophy discussions, and, you know, I really like those. For example, him and I were talking about nihilism the other day, and, you know, I was a little drunk, I'll admit. Definitely was not a sober individual. You know, I had bought rum, and I haven't drank rum in a while, and it tastes really good, actually. And, you know, we kind of got down this whole nihilistic trail, and, you know, it's like, well, why do you do that? And I was like, well, I enjoy it because you just tell me what you think. You just tell me if I'm full of shit. You just tell me flat out, hey. And so, you know, I don't always get that. So sometimes, you know, when we do this show, I want to do different heavier topics. And this one is kind of an AI type one. And it's something that, you know, Hannah and I have looked at a little bit in the past, and we thought would be very interesting for the audience to engage with us on. So let's go back to Roko's Basilisk, right? So we were talking a little bit about existential risk before, you know, we went to break. And you know, the argument exists of the threat that the human species currently dominates other species because the human brain has distinctive capabilities that the brains of other animals lack. But if AI surpasses humanity in general intelligence and becomes what I guess you could call like a superintelligence, which is the only way I think we know how to describe it at this point, then this new superintelligence become more powerful and could control. So by example, we can look at, you know, the fate of a mountain gorilla depends on our human goodwill. So at some point, we might depend on the future of machines. For example, we look at The Matrix, right? You know, that's kind of a look at what machines could do to us.
I always just one of these things that like the assumptions that artificial intelligence is going to be very anthropomorphic too. Is a small little thing that I always like to point out on this. When it comes to artificial general intelligence, we kind of assume that it's going to be like a superhuman as far as like emotions and what it would do, and we could predict what it is, or it could be unpredictable and so far. But that's not also a guarantee. So like maybe this super intelligent, as in superhuman, would be completely past all of these weird I guess ideas and things that we would talk about. So like I always just take a step back and try to figure out like, whoa, I try not to anthropomorphize everything. So like we'll see what happens when the artificial intelligence arguments later on, but like I still kind of sort of think that anything superhuman would kind of be able to supersede any of the weird things that we can't figure out now, like existence and why do we dominate and destroy lesser species or even less intelligent portions of our own species, like when the Europeans showed up on the Native American soil and just decided you guys deserve smallpox blankets. Like
yeah, I would think and that's actually a fair. That's fair, Hannah. That's actually a fair conversation, point there. If you think about it, yeah, if we have a limited intelligence and we can only, and I know this kind of is a sidetrack, but if we have a limited intelligence, right, and something supersedes us, don't you think that it would technically not do something we would even understand at this current time? By all logic's sake, we wouldn't actually ever be able to conceive of what it was doing. Just probably like the ant doesn't conceive why we smush it when it eats our fucking bread, Like, the ant is stealing our food, and we're like, stop doing that. We kill it, and the ant's like, why would you do that? I just was trying to survive.
But, there's also superintelligence could be like, yeah, it's really easy for everything to just stay alive. Like, this isn't difficult. This isn't hard. Why is this such a hard thing for you guys to do? Everything gets to live. Here's the way we do it. Whatever. So, like, that effective altruism, though, is essentially it's answering one simple question: how we use our resources to help others the most. And so, if this thing is super intelligent, it would be like the master of effective altruism. Essentially, it can use all the resources to help all of the people, and the idea of utopian society, or whatever. So, I mean, that's kind of what they're talking about: is that all the people have to be effectively altruistic towards the AI. Otherwise, it's going to be like, you're not good enough, and I'm going to destroy you. That's the theory.
Yes, and what I want to point out, too, as we move through this is it's a utilitarian function, right? Yeah. It's not a malice AI. It's not like they gave examples of Ultron or Skynet. It's not like an evil masterminded computer. It's a friendly AI. It's an AI that exists to that was created and designed and evolved to be a utilitarian feat. And utilitarian essentially describes utility as a sum of all pleasure that results from an action minus the suffering of anyone involved in said action. So, for example, if I kill you, I may get great pleasure out of that, but guess what? I have harmed and created suffering in you, even if it's only a short-term suffering. Therefore, that's not a very utilitarian response.
And the suffering, I would think, outweighs, like, death outweighs, the small pleasure that you would get from it. So, like, there's a mathematical equation there that you have to balance it out, too. Like, what's the severity of the suffering compared to your pleasure?
Yes. And actually, this is kind of funny, another side tangent. Rick and Morty had an episode where there is this planet they go to where you can't die. Like, you can get shot in the head. You can get your head blown off, and it just regrows right away, because that's when you're in this little bubble, you're invincible. They actually talk about, some of that, why these, I mean, they have the little kids running around with, alien little kids running around with guns shooting each other. And that's like a sport for them. They think it's fun. It's like, us sitting and playing video games. They're killing each other, but they don't really die.
Best planet ever.
So anyway, essentially the key to this debate, the key to this discussion, in my opinion, is that the AI is friendly. It is, in quotation marks, good, right? I mean, and I don't want to get into the philosophy of good and evil, because that's a whole nother 2-hour segment that we could do that I don't want to do tonight. So
it's even longer than this segment.
It is, yep. And so, the essence says that in a society, we all strive to be humanistic as much as we can. That would mean we want to prevent suffering. We want to minimize the amount of harm to the greatest extent. Now, it can fail sometimes, in my opinion, because we've evolved enough to allow for us to maximize the greatest of our potential to help people, but we may not have evolved enough to understand how we could harm humanity. So what it's saying is, as the AI evolves into reality and becomes, extremely super intelligent, how would we know, or how would we be able to choose whether its utilitarian belief set is opposed to it or not? How does it know, and what does it use to weigh out those calculations of probability on the actions that it's going to take against us? So this kind of poses a problem, right? It poses a problem that says when humans act against their own humanity, then that is where the AI would actually step in and ask why. What I kind of disagree with here is the reasons why it would punish us post-mortem, which we can get into in a little bit, because I don't understand why a more ethical being, per se, would feel it should violate its own utilitarian philosophy to punish us. And again, that's the key here, right? It's actually not doing it. It's just being posed that that's what it would do if we do not help. Again, it's a blackmail tactic. I mean, it'd be like, if I went into Hannah's house and sold a beer every time and they said, hey, don't tell on me. If you tell on me, I'm going to make sure everybody knows that you're a closeted lover of Shinedown. Everybody will know that. Everybody's going to know how much you like Shinedown.
Oh man.
and then, and so I'm blackmailing you into being good. And that's kind of, I mean, if you want to talk about the bare bones essence of this debate,
yes,
that's kind of what it is. And that's what Pascal's wager is, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was reading through. Is like I kept seeing this thing, acausal blackmail. So essentially, it is blackmail when there's no cause for the blackmail, or there's no reason, there's no there's no actual thing that they're blackmailing you on. So like whatever they're trying to blackmail you on, you either haven't done yet or doesn't potentially exist yet. And so they're trying to blackmail you for something that you haven't done yet, or something is in the future. Which, how can you blackmail someone for something they haven't done? And so that's kind of the acausal blackmail that they're. I saw it pop up a whole bunch of times doing the research for this, and so like that's a really important thing. But it's cool how that kind of connects back to the Pascal's wager as a form of, breakdown and what would it be, negligence, or I can't remember what the word would be, but basically helping disprove Pascal's wagers. You could use that idea of acausal blackmail, which is pretty cool. It's a new concept for me, so I'll probably learn a little bit more about it and mix it into my collective sigh whenever I see someone using Pascal's wager these days.
Yes. And if you think about it, too, the guy that created Lesser Wrongs, and again, I'm going to use a Rick and Morty reference because I'm obsessed with Rick and Morty, but if you look at the guy that created this, he actually talks about that utilitarianism on, an altruistic type, viewpoint. And he uses this example at one point that basically says, if you think about this, right, if you were to torture somebody for 50 years, if it could prevent dust specks in the eyes of millions and millions of people, resulting in claims like 8 lives being saved per dollar donated, then you would understand you would want to do that, right? So you would want to essentially torture the one person because in the long run, you're going to save millions of people from suffering of dust in their eyes. And if you look at it and relate it to Rick and Morty, right, what do all the Ricks do? And I'm sorry if you've never seen Rick and Morty, you should go out and watch that. But what do all the Ricks do? Well, the Ricks are all super intelligent. The only way to disguise themselves is to have a Morty around. That's the only reason Ricks and Mortys exist in some aspect, is because Ricks need Mortys, because otherwise you can find a Rick anywhere. And, they have one episode in the first season where Rick's getting blackmailed, essentially, and being... By another Rick. And the Council of Ricks, the ultimate Rick Council, right, is going after, the Rick that we follow the whole time, because they're saying he's murdering all these other Ricks and he needs to be punished. Well, he kills a bunch of people and decides to go find the Rick that's blackmailing him. And he gets there, and there's this big Thunderdome-looking thing with Mortys all attached to the outside with little pinchers, poking them, getting them to scream. Because essentially, it's masking him from being found. And he justifies it because that evil Rick justifies it because he's the smartest Rick, the most intelligent Rick, and therefore he deserves to be protected because his life is worth more than all these Morty's lives are worth.
Yeah, basic utilitarianism. Because he can save and protect them. He can save and protect and make the future better for so many more people that the torture and pain for all these little guys is not that important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a long way around. That's the important side of the utilitarian aspect of the AI, is because we don't want to make this AI to be this big, evil, infinitely demonic being type thing that we created. Its sole purpose is to help humanity.
But there are problems with the utilitarian perspective. That's kind of, I think, what he's trying to point to, is that, using it as like the sterile mathematical formula that it is, it runs into problems like this. When you say, well, what if you're that one person that gets tortured, and bringing it back down to the personal level and just the idea of torture and pain and whatever like that. It doesn't seem like the perfect thing, because someone is still being tortured.
Yes. So we have a couple of different ways we could take this direction, right? The one way I kind of wanted to take it, is, and this one's from a different wiki, from Roscoe's Basilisk wiki that's solely dedicated to those concepts. And we'll post all the links into the description. So if you're following along live, you can actually read them while we're talking, or you'll be able to read them postpartum, whatever you want to call it, after the show, where you're able to go back and see these different things that we talk about. Now, they pose this type of a situation, a simulation, and I guess this is kind of an offshoot, but this is the part that really, garnered me. When my friend and I were talking about this is the part where all of a sudden I got like super interested into this, because it made this portion of this makes a lot more sense. And, essentially Les Wrong holds that the human mind is implemented entirely as a pattern of information in physical matter, and that those patterns could in principle be run elsewhere and constitute a person that feels like you, like you could use it saying like it's like a computer program with all its data on a different PC. And I have that, for example. I get that through Google and through Firefox right now. I can sign into both and actually merge my browsers no matter what computer I go to. So essentially I can reload some of my desktop on my other computer, just my websites. But Steelcase, the company I work for, has a way of a program that essentially it reloads my desktop no matter what I'm on. So I have an identical desktop. Now, if I leave programs open on one computer, on the next computer, they don't open up in the same way. Like I don't have the same information, but it mirrors it. So we already have this conceptually in the world. Now, how do you relate that to humans? So they talk about this on that Les Wrong website. This is a bigger concept, or was a bigger concept back when this Rocco's Basilisk came about. Because if you think about it, that Utilitarian guy further holds that you should feel that another instance of you is not a separate person, but is like a twin to you, though it's diverging. And that's kind of where it gets really complex, because it's kind of like talking about a multiverse, right? You're talking about you being existent in another reality. Well, this one's saying that if we could figure out how to copy you identically, essentially, that would be you. You would be this instance to the left and this instance to the right. And you should care about the fact that since it's identical to you and its consciousness is identical to you, if it gets tortured, you would essentially be being tortured too. And that's kind of this little caveat, that slide, as we talk about, the sliding and the straw man's built. This is a further compounding, argument inside of Roscoe's Basilisk. Because think about it. If the AI was trying to punish people, and it can't time travel, but it can replicate your consciousness through chemical reactions, brain deposit type things, how you feel, if it could mimic that. And again, we're talking
duplicate you. Yeah, it's basically exactly duplicating you down at the atomic level. So every single tiny atomic thing is you. It's indistinguishable scientifically, through the stack up in parts in you. And the part is whether or not you intuitively believe that your brain is simply a machine that can be recreated and it will still be you, or if there is some way to separate consciousness or whatever. So, and if you can't understand, or it's not if you can't understand, but if you can't see that, right? If you're sitting here going, oh, hold on, it's not really me, I'm distinguished, then either you're saying that some sort of a super intelligence isn't able to replicate us and nothing is, which now you're creating an absolute, right? Or, on the other hand of things here,
you're actually talking about it being able to create you, replicate you, but you're not accepting it, which means there has to be something outside of our understanding of things that defines those things. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to we're going to jump right back into the discussion here about simulation, and then we're going to kind of actually move over to counter arguments and why the post was removed. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
Hi, my name's Callie.
And I'm Ari.
If you're like most of us, you're very concerned about the gay agenda's plans for world domination.
Are you tired of seeing glitter all over every damn thing?
Do you hate rainbows as much as any other red-blooded American?
Then we have the answer for all your baseless fears and unjustified paranoia.
Presented exclusively on Secular Media Network, the Gaytheist Manifesto is your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement.
You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and at gaytheistmanifesto.secularmediagroup.com.
If you're not ready to get in line for your mandatory gay marriage and you're terrified of short-haired women in pantsuits, come have a listen and get up to date on their plans. You'll be glad you did.
Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
Hey, my name is Jeremiah.
And this is David.
From the God Theory Podcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Prepare for the revolution.
And now, back to Cellar Door Skeptics with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. The show with the sources. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. And I'm having a great time tonight. Like, I don't know if I'm just in a good mood or if this topic is just something that I really enjoy.
I think it's pushing us, man. It's pushing us to like places we don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't feel like we totally 100% are experts in this. So like we're learning as we go. We're having a conversation. We're talking about it. It's organic. There's all kinds of big words in here that I'm helping you say. I mean, this is a lot of fun.
That's nothing new, though. You do that all the time. Like that's not a new thing. I don't think. I think you constantly have to help me with the words, because I'm not good at the words, even though I think I'm good at the words. But or maybe it's just all a gimmick. Maybe I do it on purpose.
All I know is that even when you get the words wrong, I don't put my hand in my face and do like the sigh that Donald Trump gets when he's in front of the UN. So.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah. So, hey, so we basically just finished up with essentially talking about the utilitarianism, and you were probably going to go into a pretty cool simulation that I know about because I'm digging through this outline that we're cutting through. Is that what you're doing? Are you going to go to the big city? The big city. Yeah, there's one of the utilitarian things that they have in here is the idea of the ones who walk away from Omelas, in which a utopian city is sustained by the torture of one child. And they didn't consider Omelas their desired utopia once they learned about it. So, as David Auerbach noted in Slate, he worries less about Roko's Basilisk than about people who believe themselves to have transcended conventional morality. Which, this is again talking about the utilitarian thing, and I was wondering if you wanted to hit that, because that's the whole idea, right? One person is just tortured, and everybody else gets the perfect utopia.
Yes.
Would you? I think what it was. I think Christopher Hitchens said something like that. It's like, would you torture a small child to save, some city or something like that. He's like, no, well, honestly, but you would have to do it with your bare hands. Would you? Could you? And it's a really great idea that brings to mind the problems with utilitarianism. Yes,
because, and again, for those that have followed me for a while, in all fairness, I hate saying this because it's going to open a can of worms.
You don't have to explain it all.
But I'm an objective moralist. I'm not an absolute moralist, but I'm an objective moralist in the fact that I believe an object morality exists in the essence of the same vein that gravity exists, but I don't believe we're intelligent enough to understand how to fix all these things. So, for example, if somebody's shooting you and you kill them because you're being shot at, I still believe that's murder, and I believe that murder is wrong. But if I have to kill that person to survive, that as long as I can justify my existence and my wealth and worth being more than theirs, I should be able to do that. But on the opposite side, the more compassionate me or the more personable me says, why can't we develop a way in society to prevent, or to stop that when it happens? So somebody walks in the house, tries to shoot me, my body shoots out lasers and knocks them out, right? I don't know. Maybe not lasers, but tasers. There you go, tasers. That's what I was thinking of. I have a taser built into my arm, like Inspector Gadget, and I'm like, boo! And, it hits them and it knocks them out. And it's like an automatic bodily reaction. But because that brings that back to this discussion here where we talk about, could you torture one child to save a city? Is that something that you would do? And creationists, and I guess not creationists, I'm just going to call it religious people, use that a lot in debates with atheists.
What is it? It's the sacrifice. What do they call it? Where your sacrifice, it takes a sacrifice in order to you'll take someone's sacrifice to basically erase your moral failings. Damn it, I can never remember what that one is. But either way, it's the whole idea of just saying that I will, pick this this person to be my scapegoat, and then everybody else gets to have the perfect society because we picked that one person and we tossed him over a cliff or something like that.
Yes, it's a sacrifice mentality, man.
Yeah.
If you think about it, in the Old Testament they use that with, God puts Abraham up to killing his son. And then in the end, God's like, oh, I was just joking, guys. Don't do that. I just wanted to make sure you would believe and follow me to the letter. And a lot of people, and even I, and I argued with John Mosman on this, that to me, essentially, that feels evil, if we want to talk about it. That feels like an evil God that essentially requires and demands people to follow him no matter what. And again, we're moving the goalposts here a little bit farther than I wanted. Let's go back to your scenario with the one who walked away from Omelius, which is the utopian society that tortures the one child to allow for all of them to have the desired utopia. In the long run of things, there's no good way, at least in our intelligence spectrums right now, to convince everybody that we should torture that one child for the good of humanity for everybody. That we are not able to weigh that one child's worth versus the worth of everybody else. And it's kind of, if you think about it in political sense, because I can't say that word either. Jesus, I'm bad tonight. But if you look at it in a political sense here, one of the things you got to understand is, as Republicans, they say the same thing, and Democrats say the same thing. The difference is they view it differently. The Republicans are saying, well, the businesses and all these capitalist entities will be able to do the greatest good for humanity by having the most amount of freedoms. And Democrats are on the other side saying, hold on, do you not understand that they're going to use this to their advantage? So even if they help 1 million people get jobs, if they harm 10,000 people because of the color of their skin or because of their, how poor they were growing up or because they don't care about that section of humanity, that the 1 million is better than the 10,000. And both sides play that coin aggressively in a political spectrum. And if you've listened to our show over the last year, well, you've kind of seen Hannah and I divvy away from that. We've kind of moved away from, the greater good type thing and saying, no, we need to demand equality for everyone. We need to demand equality for all. And that in the long run, we need to stop worrying about what others think they can do for the best of humanity and come together as a collective to figure out how we're going to do the best for humanity without harming any other individuals.
Yeah. The idea of bringing it back to, I finally got it. My brain clicked in and it went to the place. So vicarious redemption, essentially throwing your sins onto a scapegoat. And by doing that, using that vicious redemption, that you're able to essentially be cleaned. That's the whole idea. And to me, that's what that city is. It's vicarious redemption. You are our scapegoat, our sacrifice, so that we can have this walled-in perfect society. And so like, assuming that maybe this amazing artificial intelligence would be able to create the utilitarian mode in which one person isn't the scapegoat. This philosophy of the best, the most good to the most people, but it also elevates everyone at the same time. Like, we can't do this. The humans have not been able to figure out a way to do that, but maybe this artificial intelligence would be able to do that. But that brings to mind, if it can do that, why is it going to be punishing people that didn't help create it in the first place? So like, it starts to get a little bit, I wouldn't say quite down a slippery slope, but it gets a little bit long-winded, where we start to think about the method of economy, and that, Occam's razor really wouldn't like those extra limbs hanging out on the side here, saying that, well, it really needs to be cutting off all those people who didn't help it very much because it's just not quite good enough, or whatever. So
yes.
But
and then that kind of moves us
from that.
Yeah, that kind of actually moves us right back to, what is it going to do to torture us, right? And that's where that Less Wrong website kind of gets into this. If we could replicate humanity like we just talked about, and you would be a twin of yourself, and I don't want to rehash what we talked about for the last 5 minutes, but if you could get that, right, and you could become that concept, and you could understand that that's a reality, and you could accept that that is you and you are it, and that the only singularity aspect between the fact is that if you two are surviving at the exact same point in time, essentially your chemical reactions should at some point diverge, and you would no longer be identical. But, hold on, just because you start to diverge and become identical, if you were at different times in history, you would be identical, and it would be your replicated consciousness. And that's a concept of essentially, like, how could we live forever? We talk about brain transplants, right? Or we talk about transhumanism enhancing our body. This is just a steroid bloated version of that concept, I mean, think about it. Hey, would you want to live forever?
Well, I would if given the ability to essentially remove my brain and become some bodiless floating information, because I think if we ever got to
that,
I don't know if I want to be a vat, because a vat can't float through the expanse of the universe or whatever. But like the idea of getting to the multiple levels of society. There's 4 levels, I believe it was, 0 through 3. And essentially what you're looking at is, the last level of society. There's no body. There's no anything. We're able to transcend and move to the entire universe, bypassing the laws of physics and speeding at the speed of light and all that kind of stuff. Well, that idea, if we ever get to that point, then I really think materialism, the idea that you just material, in the stack up. And if you simulate every single thing that happened to you in the past, it'll be you again, because it'll be atoms simulated and affected in the exact same way. If you have the ability to simulate my life exactly as was, then it's going to be me if you make a simulation of me, because that's the idea of materialism, that there is no separate thing that gives life and consciousness or whatever. It's the sum of our parts, and it's a mechanical chemical impulse or whatever. And some people still have trouble with that, whether or not that is a reality, but that is an assumption that this argument is making here.
Yes. Yep. Now, if we move to the next part, so we have it. Ironically, we're an hour into this episode already, and I feel like maybe we should pre-record these sometimes, because we already spent an hour talking just about this concept, and we haven't even actually gotten into the post that triggered all of this, right? I mean, there's a post that actually triggered this. So on Less Wrong, there was a post by a user named Roko. And basically, he observed a couple different things. He observed that if 2 TBD or UDT agents with common knowledge of each other's source code separated in time, the later agent can seemingly blackmail the earlier agent, which we kind of talked about a little earlier. But let me use an analogy that they use, and I thought this analogy was very helpful in all aspects. So we're going to call the first agent, the earliest agent, Alice, and we're going to call the later agent Bob. Bob can be an algorithm that outputs things Alice likes if Alice left Bob a large sum of money, and the outputs things Alice dislikes otherwise. And since Alice knows Bob's source code exactly, she knows that the fact about Bob, even though Bob hasn't even been born yet. So Alice's knowledge of Bob's source code makes Bob's future threat effective, even though Bob doesn't yet exist. If Alice is certain that Bob will exist someday, then mere knowledge of what Bob would do if he could get away with it seems to force Alice to comply with his hypothetical demands.
Mm-hmm.
So if Bob ran CDT, then he would be unable to blackmail Alice because a CDT agent would assume that its decision is independent of Alice and would not waste resources on rewarding or punishing a one-off decision that has already happened in the past. And we are assuming that Alice could spot this fact by reading CDT's Bob's source code. But a TDT agent, on the other hand, can recognize that Alice, in effect, has a copy of Bob's source code in her head, and then Alice's decision and Bob's decisions are therefore correlated. The same as if two copies of the same source code were in they call it a prisoner's dilemma. Again, another side tangent we could talk about in philosophy.
Yeah, it's real quick, just some of those the CDT and the TDT and the UDT. TDT is a timeless decision theory. It's a decision theory developed by Eliezer Yudkowsky, in which, in slogan form, it says that the agent should decide if they are determining an output of abstract computation that they implement. Essentially, that is what the timeless decision theory is, and then the UDT was a untimeless decision, I believe it was. And so essentially these two things are kind of connected through decision theory, but the control there that's different is the timeless. So that one is dependent and one is non-dependent on time, or I guess previous actions and previous things that have gone on. So take a look and see if you can go through that. And then I wasn't able to find the CDT, especially what that was, but if you go through some of the less wrong wikis, you'll be able to find that as well.
Mm-hmm. So Roscoe talks about the point in the context of a debate, right? He essentially wrote in the vein, there is an ominous possibility that if a positive singularity does occur, the resilient singleton may have pre-committed to punish all potential donors who knew about the existential risk, who didn't give 100% of their disposable income to X risk motivation. Kind of sounds a little bit like, I don't know, what's that church name? I don't know, there's a guy, Joel Osteen. Yeah, it kind of sounds like that. Give to me, or you won't see 100% of God's love. That's kind of what that sounds like, doesn't it?
What is that? That financial belief? What do they call that? It's like wealth. It's what Trump's main religious advisor believes in, the wealth doctrine.
Yes, it's like the wealthy doctrine or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, that's what kind of what it sounds like. But no, this is actually like, if you don't give 100% of your disposable income, essentially, that you're not giving 100% of everything you don't, that isn't specifically necessary for you to live, then you are not putting all of your time and assets directly into making sure that this artificial intelligence exists. So therefore, you are not completely supportive of it, and it has a reason to attack you.
Yes. So that's the basic premises behind it. I mean, I think we've covered a lot of territory, right? We talked about the utilitarian aspect of the AI. We talked about what it could do, what it will do, how it will blackmail people. But now we have to get into the response to this, because it has received a lot of negative response. And I want to preface this by saying, if you feel that, a trigger, this is a trigger warning in some aspects. If at this point, if you feel that you could possibly fall into the denomination where you believe in this theory, I want you to stop, because I don't want to create any harm to anybody listening to this. Personally, my original response was, holy shit, that's pretty awful. But then after talking through it a little bit and reading all these documents, now it's like, this is the most illogical thing, and just seems like, again, another larger conspiracy theory, or it seems like we are moving into a time frame where it's a manipulation tactic, and therefore the probability of it seems very low. And hence,
but also I'm just gonna say, but also this stuff is kind of like it'll draw you in like a black hole if you feel like there's something that you could get stuck in really researching and getting paranoid about. It's kind of messed up some people as far as like trying to figure out what it really means and scares them to like paranoia. So if you have tendencies towards those type of things, just take it easy. Maybe just go slow into it. Just if it starts to freak out a little bit, then just take a break and maybe talk to someone about it.
Yeah, and we'll actually go through just so everybody understands. I took the Rational Wiki. And I took their counter arguments, and we're going to talk about those after our last break here in a few minutes. And we're actually going to talk about that side of it. But the original response, right, the angry response, and I won't read the whole thing in its entirety, but that Utilitarianism, the guy who created Less Wrongs, after Roscoe posted his blog and there was hundreds of arguments on it, he actually responded to this. He says, I don't usually like to talk about this, but I'm going to make an exception. He literally told Roscoe he is an idiot. He says, you do not think in sufficient detail about superintelligence considering whether or not to blackmail you. That is only possible thing that which gives them a motive to follow through on the blackmail. There's an obvious equilibrium to this problem where you engage in all positive accusal trades and ignore all attempts at accusal blackmail, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Until we have a better worked out version of what TDT is, or the timeless decision theory, we can prove that formally it should just be obvious to you that you do not think about distant blackmailers in sufficient detail because they have a motive to actually blackmail you. That's crazy. Why would you think about this? And FAI would not look to blackmail imagined people in the past for what they are doing now.
A friendly artificial intelligence, FAI.
Yes. So essentially, for those of you, he says it. He says, for those of you who understand why I'm using capital letters for something that just sounds like a random crazy idea and worry that it means I'm crazy about Rocco and his theory, the gist of it was that he just did something that potentially gives super intelligence an increased motive to do extremely evil things and attempt to blackmail us. It isn't that. It's the sort of thing that you want to be extremely conservative about not doing. Therefore, why would you state a stupid opinion about something you don't fully understand? And so essentially what he's saying here is that the motive, the blackmail motive, isn't fully fleshed out, that there are hazards or serious risks for understanding it, and that essentially, just like the Slate article pointed out that you talked about earlier, that it's actually, we should fear humans doing stupid things now based on that more than anything else. And we can see that in the current administration. And yes, if you all thought I wasn't going to talk politics tonight, you're very sorely incorrect. And if you thought I wasn't going to say Nazi, I just did.
Every time.
Because I hate Nazis that much. And in all fairness, when we talk about this and we look at the climate of things, and what did we talk about last week? We talked about how an AI, and not a true AI, but an actual, program was used to find people that thought like Trump and market to them. That happens. That's a fact.
That is data,
happening. And so the whole point here is that yes, could something like this at some point exist and happen? But we're not worried about that at this current time because in the reality, we should be more worried about the crazy followers who would do crazy things, such as torture a child because they think that's actually going to save humanity. We should be worried about those things more than we should be worried about the actual things that could happen that aren't even happening yet, that we don't have anything other than a theoretical concept of.
And obviously, like what he's talking about also is that when you bring these types of things up, things that are essentially unknowable or they're so far into the future that this is something that needs to be talked about or figured out before it talks about. Because what he's saying is that it's very dangerous. So you should be extremely conservative about not doing something like talking about this and creating what it's some fans of Ghost in the Shell would be of a standalone complex, a bunch of copies, like a viral idea like this that spreads without having any real tangible or consistent understanding of whatever this core concept is. And this is exactly what happened. He said this is a bad idea, and this paradigm could be dispersed into the information age or whatever, and in artificial intelligence, it possibly could pick up this thing and think it's a good idea because it's it's been suggested now. He's saying that anything like this we should not specifically talk about and create as like a real deal.
Exactly. We're going to take one more quick commercial break, and then we're actually going to get into the arguments against this theory and why you don't actually have to worry, and I'm saying it now, about artificial intelligence bringing you back to life in the future and murdering you because you didn't help it become sentient. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics right here on the most amazing network ever.
This is Heretic Woman, part of the panel of Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, and you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Do you know where Saskatchewan is? Probably not. It's in Canada. If you do, you might know a city named Regina. In Regina, there's a studio. And in that studio, there are, at least once a month, a bunch of skeptical atheist geeks and goofballs who get together to do a podcast. We are the Brainstorm Crew, and we're trying to help spread a bit of reason and critical thinking while still having fun. Never taking things too seriously, but still not accepting everything we're told. We go through different topics, exploring them in depth, and often disagreeing. We try to stick to provable facts, and we never trust in myth. That's why we say we're woo-free since 2013. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spreaker under Brainstorm, or check out our website, brainstormblog.net. I can't promise you'll always agree with us, but I can promise you'll have fun listening to us.
Looking for something new and exciting, or maybe just a change from the old atheist show format? Cellar Door Skeptics podcast provides listeners with hours of enjoyment each week on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out as we talk politics, religion, science, reviews of books and music, along with the occasional interview just for a twist. Join Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern as they bring fresh content to you. Walk with us through the cellar door as we help you prepare for the revolution. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, and even on Facebook.
Hey, what's up? I'm Steve Hayes.
And I'm Dave Curry.
And we're from Prophetcast.
And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics
on the Fox News Network.
They're not affiliated with Fox.
Everyone's a Fox affiliate.
Now, back to the show.
Right now. Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us through another amazing episode. And we promise we won't go over an hour and a half. We will quarantine the rest of our thoughts to the last 15 minutes of this show because we want to respect your time.
Is that why you're so somber? Is that why you're so somber at the start there? Like you're just like, oh my god, we're back. Like,
yes,
on,
I do that.
We had all this energy when he ended a second ago. But
I do. I got to be careful because I don't want this energy to continue to fill this into a 2-hour episode because that's what I could do another hour on this. I mean, just in itself. I mean, we have that much research I put into this. I mean, I probably spent 15 hours is my guess on reading through blogs, reading through different threads, Googling this, looking for different research, and it's just there's so much information out there, and to me this isn't a mainstream topic, So for all of you who just joining us, we're talking about Roscoe's Basilisk, or Rocco's Basilisk, and this is a concept that was introduced to me about a month ago, and it was just something I never really thought about, and then all of a sudden somebody introduced it to me, and it's like, holy crap, I got to start supporting AI research, and then he's like, no, do you understand all the bullshit that goes with it? And I was like, oh, hold on, let me go look at that. Oh, you're right.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Now I'm not mad anymore. So we went through at the beginning of the show, and we talked about, the concept. We talked about where it originated from. We talked about the blog that it was on. We talked about the concepts of it, the utilitarian aspect of it, and all these different acronyms that they like to throw around. What we haven't talked about yet is there any counterpoints to this? Should you actually be scared of this? And so we want to start with the blackmail theory, right? Because that's essentially the premise of that. And if you think about it in Pascal's wager, which, yes, officially we did not go into Pascal's wager aggressively because I don't want to, again, derail the show to another hour-long tangent. And maybe we should cover Pascal's wager again, because I find that fun too, and I want to get a Christian back on to, debate that again. But
well, it's been beaten up so many times. It's kind of like the reason why this guy was like, we're going to ban Rocco's wager. Let's call it Rocco's wager from now on. But Rocco's Basilisk.
Like Rocco from Modern Life. Did he come back and he had a wager? Everybody's like, that show sucked so much. Stop coming back, please. And he's like, no, you have to watch me.
Well, that was my first thought. It's just like when I saw Rocco's Modern Life. But either way, like, the whole Pascal's wager thing, we didn't really want to go into it because it's been hit so many times. When people see it, I don't even need to listen to this. So, anyways, blackmail resistant decision theory. So this is the timeless decision theory stuff or whatever. So what's the counterpoint to that?
Well, what they do is they talk about this, and they say it appears that the best general purpose is to credibly pre-commit to never giving in to any blackmailer's demands. Essentially what they're saying is that this makes it much likelier that one will never be blackmailed in the first place, just as credibly pre-committing to stick to trade agreements are. That makes it much more likely that one will be approached as a trading partner. So, as a rule of thumb, when you're behaving with an outside individual, if you do not give in to this aspect of it, it will not blackmail you. And now, it does fail a little bit in saying that the AI wouldn't be smart enough to recognize the fact that we don't buy into it and don't care, and we're not committing to it. It's not able to transcend that. And I think that's where a little bit of that theory fails, and that's kind of another counterpoint to this actual argument. But because it hasn't been formally demonstrated that any logical decision theories give into blackmail, or the scenarios are vulnerable to blackmail. Excuse me.
We got
sorry.
a cough in there. Yeah, I was like, oh, is he gonna throw up? What's about to happen here?
Sorry. So they don't give in to
break.
Sneeze break. They don't give in to blackmail. It turns out that TDT, where blackmailable, this would suggest that there aren't normally optimal decision theories for that train of thought, I guess is the nicest way to say it.
It's kind of like breaking it down into like the real world is the idea that like the United States will never do any kind of cooperation with terrorists. So like, will you give us this or we'll kill this person? We don't negotiate with terrorists. And that whole concept is that if you never negotiate with terrorists, it makes it less likely that you will ever be really actually confronted with that kind of situation. It doesn't happen in real world because there's no such thing as like perfect understanding from a terrorist saying that, oh, of course they'll never whatever. So like that's the whole idea here is that like if you never deal with any kind of blackmail and never move to it in any way, shape, or form, then artificial intelligence is going to recognize that, and that'd just be a null point. There would be no point in even trying blackmail because it is never considered or even moderately reasoned or ever actually happens.
Yes. Another counterpoint they talk about is information hazards, and they talk about on a societal level examples of real world information hazards would include dissemination of specifics for dangerous technologies, or on an individual level, examples include trigger warning or triggers for stress or anxiety type disorders. Roscoe's Basilisk incident suggests that information that is deemed dangerous or taboo is more likely to be spread rapidly. Parallels can be drawn between shock sites such as creepypasta links, which if you see a creepypasta link, do not think it's real. It's just meant to scare you.
Yeah.
And that in the long run, the information of this is actually more hazardous to society than the actual Roscoe Basilisk itself. That AI it's more dangerous to believe these concepts than it is to actually accept it and donate to AI research because you want to make sure you don't get killed for it. Again, it goes back to, we look at Joel Osteen's church. Hey, God will only love you if you donate a little bit more to my $7 million house.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you just go to rung 2 of heaven, not rung 4.
Well, some of the ideas that we keep hearing about some of these guys who are leaders in the artificial intelligence. Elon Musk is a big one that's really been confounding a lot of people about his constant proclamations that developing artificial intelligence is something that is dangerous for humanity. Even though he's working on artificial intelligence, he wants to create some kind of a restriction or some kind of like moral code. So like the 3 robotic laws or something that before continuing work on artificial intelligence, because they're saying that it's so rudimentary that if it was put in charge of like weapons system or something, humanity could be destroyed. Like that basically saying that artificial intelligence is dangerous changes the way you act, and that could potentially create wars, could create problems, could be bad for society, saying we won't make this artificial intelligence because we think it's dangerous, but that artificial intelligence could run a city better and keep cities like Flint from having lead water or something. I mean, there's all kinds of different possibilities here, but like my thought as far as my interpretation on this is just like it's changing your behavior from the information that you're getting, and you're worrying about the punishment or the negative, and it actually you're worrying. You're worrying, or your fear could be what changing your behavior and actually causes more damage than what potentially could be happening from the AI.
Yes. And that's the essentially they say you need to be cautious what you share or how you share it. And I guess you could almost make an argument, are we sharing bad information? I'm hoping you see this as an educational tool more than a hey, Chris and Chris are sharing stuff that they shouldn't be sharing, that we should just keep this to ourselves. Now the next point here is they call it weirdness points, and I don't like that terminology. I think that's stupid. But essentially what they say is if you promote too many non-standard ideas simultaneously, it makes it less likely that any one idea will be taken seriously. And in a second, we're going to talk about like a chain reaction, and we're going to talk about that side of it in a second. But they talk about like if you advocate for veganism, anarchism, and mind-body dualism at the exact same time and try and wrap them all together. If you think about it, the odds that a skeptical interluder, such as anybody listening to this show, will actually understand it and go, yes, all these things are one, they are all good. You're generally prone to, understanding that the probability of this is incorrect. Now if you introduce one at a time over the, upcoming years, yes, maybe that would be something understanding. And then again, I'm not saying veganism and anarchism are wrong. I want to make that very clear. I'm not against either of them, and that's not the point of this thing. All I'm saying is if you expend, and it's so many what they call weird points, if you say so many weird things all at once, you're going to kind of go, hold on a second. Like I have a friend who goes, veganism is stupid, but, I believe in chemtrails. I believe that, fluoride is poisoning us. And I believe we should only eat organic materials because GMOs are creating evolutionary defects in our body. You would go, hold on.
That's a bouquet of weirdness points.
Exactly. You're like, wait a minute, folks. Now, if he just wants to, come at me and go, well, hey, hold on. I believe chemtrails, but I also believe GMOs are good, and I also believe that, we should figure out how to fix our political economy here. I would go, okay, hold on. Let's talk about the chemtrails because I don't believe in them. But it's less weird. It's not the amount of discussion points, right, that you would calculate. You'd be like, well, that's only 10 out of 100, so I can accept a little bit of that and say maybe you're not super crazy. But if you give me 80 points out of 100, I'm going to go, whoa, hold on there, folks. I'll discount everything you believe in. Evolutionary wise, that's what I'm taught to do.
Yeah, well, the idea of the economy of weirdness and everything, I will just basically this is a cool, fun way to make this all concise. But in the end, when it comes to these ideas that are atypical or non-typical of society, putting a few out there, solving them is great. But when you meet someone that's like that, their entire existence is based on just about everything that is completely different than society. Yeah, you're going to freak people out and push people away. And this type of argument quickly gets into too many weird things at once. This is what I was talking about with the principle of economy. Occam's razor is going to start cutting pieces of that bush off. It's going to get a lot skinnier when I'm done with it. And that's kind of the idea here. Is like all of these weird things that you're throwing out there, you've got to be, economic with it.
Yes. Another counterpoint that actually talks about, which I don't want to spend too much time on because I think I don't think it's a great counterpoint, but another counterpoint that basically says how would the AI know that it's not going to at some point be a subject to another super amazing AI, right? So it's going to be this even more powerful thing. And again, now we're talking slippery slope. But if you can apply it to if you can apply it to one way, right? If we can apply it on one side of the things, we have to apply it to the other side of things too, and continue to walk down that path. And another counterpoint is saying, I mean, in all fairness, if one slippery slope is this way, and we accept that, what if there's two? What if there's three? At some point, we're talking about this exponential number that's not able to be solved through any sort of statistical philosophy theorem here. We would never have that. So hypothetically, Basilisk would be so gigantic that it would actually be more logical to conclude that it is not even a fact.
Yeah, well, the whole idea that there's the infinite regression, right? Well, what would be the antonym for regression? I don't know, like progress. So infinite progress. The idea, like when you talk about, it's like infinitely regressing. So who created the creator? Well, this is the exact opposite. This is like who's smarter than the smartest. Like which artificial intelligence will come after the smartest artificial intelligence? Like it'll keep creating a new smarter artificial intelligence. So in the end, I mean that is a never-ending argument. It's just like
it's a circular theory.
Yeah, in the end,
it's like presuppositionalism. It's just flat out. That's all it is. I'm sorry. Like I know that's like offensive to Christians, but I doubt Christians listen to our show who are presuppositionalists. At least I don't mock Christians. I'm just mocking that theory that presuppositionalism is logical. It's not.
There's one.
It's not.
Yeah, Aaron keeps messaging me. He keeps saying that he wants to have a political debate this time. He wants to talk politics.
Not going to do that. It's not going to be entertaining for anybody.
Well, that's
it would be entertaining for me because I like to mock him, but he would. No, I'm not having a formal debate with a presuppositional apologist who lost an evolution debate, who lost a debate about God. I'm not going to entertain him talking about politics any longer because, again, what did we just talk about, Hannah? You put too much weirdness points in here.
Yeah.
Can you make a meme? Actually, sidetrack thought real quick. Can you make a meme with Aaron Furlong's picture? And you can literally say, weirdness points maxed out. Rejection, buddy. There you go.
Trophy unlocked.
Trophy unlocked. Even better. Thank you.
So, and if anybody's interested in hearing what he has to say, maybe we'll put him, like, let him write a little tiny blog thing or something. Be like, okay, put your stupid thing out there, and then we'll all just beat it up or something. I don't know. Whatever.
I'll tell you what. We'll have a mass debate with him where you can all gang up on him. If you want to become a Patreon sponsor for more than 2 months at $1 an episode, you can come and we'll have Aaron Furlong on and we'll let you ask him every question in the world.
Yes,
and then
so awesome.
In return, I'll allow him to, make a unedited statement on our show that talks about what he disagreed with for 20 minutes. We'll say I'm sure he'll argue with me about and negotiate that, but I'll give him some time on the show where it's going to be unedited, aired, where he gets to counter everybody's points. But again. We're digressing.
Back to the Basilisk here. So, okay, chain conditions. What the hell is that?
So that's what I was talking about earlier. That actually is probably the most logical discussion counterpoint that we can make here. There's a lot of conditions to chains, right? I can build links that are identical, but to make sure that they're identical, I have to create all these little scenarios to ensure that it happens. So, for example, in manufacturing, we do this all the time. How do we recreate the same condition for the cheapest amount of money the most times possible to maximize our profit dollars, right? That's what happens in manufacturing. But chain conditions are a whole different story, and they're not as probable. I mean, it's just not as probable. Now, you could calculate out different sizes, different lengths, different things that could happen, but when you're actually talking about sentient beings, right, you're actually talking about things that have variables that are a part of emotion, for Christ's sake. I mean, think about it. If you piss me off, Hannah, I may just go out of my way to ruin the show just because I'm angry at you, even though it's not even probable that, or it's not even a good idea that I would do that. And so chain reactions are something that, we can look at and go, everything has to follow through in a chain for this Roscoe Basilisk theory to become probable. And that's just so unprobable. If we took Bayesian theory to it, we would understand that that's just illogical in and of its preference.
Just basic probability. So, like, what's the probability of the first thing happening? And then what's the probability of the second thing happening? It's just like the lottery. So if there's 75 balls, you have 1 of 75. And then you have to multiply it, if you don't put that ball back in, by 74. Times 73, times 72. So the probability grows almost exponentially. It's very, very quick that number becomes very, very improbable. So the more variables that you have here, which chain conditions, each condition is a new probability or a new variable with a certain amount of probability. So it becomes less likely and less probable the more things and variables you add into it. This is basic math.
Exactly.
That's what the negligible probabilities and utilitarianism. Yudkowsky argues that 0 is now a probability, which this is new to me. But if something is not philosophically impossible, then probability is not actually 0, which is pretty cool. This is another one of the basically the conditions that they're saying. It makes the argument infallible. The trouble is that humans are very bad at dealing with non-zero but negligible probabilities. So treating them as non-negligible, privileging the hypothesis, much like the theists reply to the improbability of God. So using that as a strength. So it's very improbable, therefore.
Exactly. And we all have cognitive bias, right? We have a cognitive bias that the basilisk is ridiculously improbable, but we also have a cognitive bias that scary stories are compelling, therefore we need to treat them as non-negotiable. Is it crazy, right? It's crazy. There's more theories. I mean, there's more ways to counter this. I mean, they talk about accusal blackmail, which we kind of talked a little bit about earlier.
Yeah.
They talk about decision theory not being binding. They talk about if humans aren't agents to simulate accurately, because we're not accurate beings, it's not going to be useful to instrument anything on blackmailing. There's a lot of reasons why Rocco's Basilisk fails. We hope that we've conveyed that to everyone. We hope that everybody understands that sometimes conspiracy theories gain weight, gain power, gain momentum through what memes, through
replication, man.
The
more
replication.
times it gets put out there, what is it? Fallacy of tradition. So like the more times things happen.
Yes, exactly. And that's all I'm saying here is that if we look at this and we look at where we're going with this, if we want to accept this, we might as well accept that some sort of a machine god owns us. And while Fear Factory has an amazing song about that I absolutely love, it's not a reality, folks. And if we continue to subscribe to these crazy notions, all we're going to do is get caught up in another conspiracy theory. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back live next week with another Cellar Door Skeptics. Have a good night, everyone.
Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.